So, good afternoon, Facebook friends, family, life remodeled or life remodelers, everybody. My name is Chris Lambert. I'm the founder and CEO of Life Remodeled. I am here today with one of my best friends, a guy who's taught me more than anyone I know on the planet about how Black and white America can love each other, work together, and really make this country a better place. Dwan Dandridge, who is our vice president of Life Remodeled. And basically today, this is really a follow-up to an email I wrote last week that I entitled, Stop Hating Black Men, America. And the email got a wide variety of responses, vast majority really positive. But we're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about a little bit today of my experience of being a white ally. And I just want to say I'm no expert. I am just a learner on this journey. And we'll talk about that journey as well and what that's been like. But Dwan and I are just going to have a conversation. So if you have any questions you want to type in on Facebook, please do. We'd love to get around to those at some point. If we miss some, please forgive us because we are on Zoom and sometimes we're not able to see things as live as they pop up on Facebook, but we still love you guys. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Dwan. Take it away, man.
Yeah. So, man, in spite of all that's been happening and all the craziness in the world, I definitely have been looking forward to jumping on and sharing, one of the many discussions that we have with, everybody out there in Facebook land. So I'm excited, and I just want to dive in and ask a few questions, based on some of the feedback we received, and just like, your heart for like wanting to even send an email out like the one that you had. So with that leads me to the first question, like, why did you feel the need to put a letter out entitled Stop Hating Black Men, America?
A lot of reasons. And really, I think the deepest reason comes from my place of faith. And I follow this guy we call Jesus. And I'm convinced that Jesus loves everybody, but he spent the majority of his time with the people who were most oppressed in society. And my son's trying to get me. I'm on a Facebook Live. I love you, buddy. I do love you. And that really, as a follower of Jesus, I want to do the same thing. And he spent more time and he even advocated more for people who were oppressed and marginalized in society than he did for everyone else. And so I want my life to be about that as well. And specifically why I wrote that article is because we need more than news reports about what just happened and even what is happening and what's continuing to happen. We need to be on the same page as to why it happened, and not only why this happened to George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and others, but why this has been happening for literally over 400 years. And we got to look back and we got to reflect on the past to understand why we're here today. And the other reason I wrote it is because of the high profile of these extremely horrific events. I do think it's capturing the attention of a lot of people in America right now. And people are reflecting on, is America an equitable place for Black Americans? And of course, you have a wide variety of perspectives on that. And I think some people are even looking in the mirror right now and asking themselves, do I love Black men? Or do I love Black Americans? And I can say I'm one of those people that's doing that. And we can get into that. But I think it's an important time to speak up about these things.
That's good. No, thanks for sharing that. And I think, starting a conversation or sparking a conversation on this subject matter, we all know that it's controversial. Some people, may agree with the statement, some disagree. But we also have people that don't even think that the conversation is necessary. So with that being the case, and I know that we have, you have a wide range of friends that are on, everywhere on that spectrum, right? So what type of calculation, or explain to us the thoughts that went through your mind when you were counting the cost of, sending an email out like that?
So, Dwan, obviously, you know our nonprofit inside out, and most people who are watching this probably do. At the heart of our mission is we want to bridge people across divides to help transform each other's lives, because we're convinced that we need each other. City, suburb, we got to work together. And to that end, like you said, we work with all different types of people from all different walks of life. And we have over 18,000 people on our email distribution list. So before I wrote that, and even before I wrote that title, I knew there's going to be some people on this list that are going to be furious with what I'm about to say. And it could lead to some donations going away. And as a nonprofit leader, one of the biggest things I do is raise funding for the cause, because if there's no money, there's nothing, right? We could have the best idea in the world to make a difference in Detroit, but if people don't step up and give donations, financial contributions, and volunteering their time, then it just doesn't happen. It just doesn't work. So I had to really count that cost of, okay, if we lose some dollars, is it going to be worth sending out this message? And here's what it came down to for me. So I prayed before I wrote it. I prayed before I hit send. And I sent it to you. I sent it to our team and said, how can we make this better and really make sure we're bridging people in the process and not just saying inflammatory things just to ruffle feathers, because we really want to be effective. And here's what I felt. I felt the cost of not sending that email was greater than the cost of maybe losing a few dollars from donors.
So talk about exactly what you mean by that. Like, what was the cost for you of not sending it?
Not sending it would be to go against my character. It'd be to go against what God is doing in me. And it would be to become someone that I no longer want to be. So even as recent as 2016, I probably would have said that I'm not racist. I don't have prejudice toward Black people. And I now don't think that way about myself. I've now come to realize I have a lot of prejudice and a lot of racism that's in me. And one of the reasons I would have said that is because I've lived in or traveled to every continent in the world except for Antarctica. And I lived in Africa for 9 months with my wife. And so I thought that I was post-racial and that I'd really figured this thing out. And so because I felt that way, I know that there's a whole lot of people that I'm friends with that the idea of them being potentially prejudiced is like one of the worst ideas they can possibly think of. And I knew some people were going to take this really personally. I knew that some people were going to think that I was standing in front of them, pointing a finger at them and saying, "You're a disgusting white supremacist." And that's not what the letter did, but that's how some people were going to read it. And that's just where they are right now in this conversation. And they see no prejudice in themselves whatsoever. So I knew that some people were going to take it the wrong way. And I knew it would lessen their opinion of me. And I knew it would lessen their opinion of this organization. But I believe that even those that are feeling that way, the ones that have written me, we're going to overcome it. Now, there's probably a number of them out there that have not responded back to me and they're just inwardly stewing. And I hope we can have a conversation at some point.
It's good. That's really good. So understanding that there are people all over the spectrum, but that there are, many like white men, women that have realized that there is an issue. Do you think that more white people should be vocal about this subject matter?
Well, you already know what I believe, but I'll tell everybody else, absolutely. And I'm going to start with this. Number one, these events that have just recently transpired are incredibly traumatic for Black Americans. And in my relationships with many Black Americans, I cannot overstate how traumatic, how emotional this is affecting the soul, the spirit. And so one thing white people need to do is we need to show and we need to demonstrate our love and our support. We need to make sure that our Black friends know that we know racism in America is real, that it's not smoke and mirrors. You're not making this thing up. This isn't like an episode from the Twilight Zone where maybe racism exists. We need to let Black people know we know it's real. It exists. It's literally killing people. And it's not only George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery. It's thousands and hundreds of thousands of people that never even made the news and never got caught on camera so that we can all have undeniable proof. I have not yet met a person who does not have very strong opinions on what's happening in our country right now. I have met a whole lot of people who have very strong opinions that I personally believe are dead wrong. and that they're sorely misdirected, and they need to look at this way differently. And if we don't speak up, then our voice doesn't get heard, and we allow people to remain in what I would call a level of ignorance that is killing many Black Americans. Lastly, I'm going to say this. As a follower of Jesus, Jesus says, "To whom much is given, much is required." I personally believe in white privilege. I believe in many ways, and I know a lot of my friends don't believe in white privilege. I believe in many ways I was born on third base just because of the color of my skin. Now, I realize a lot of my white friends have grown up in difficult environments. Maybe you had an alcoholic dad, or your father left you, or you grew up in poverty, or so on and so forth. But there are elements to being white that automatically give me more privilege and power than my Black brothers and sisters, not because of the way God designed it, but because of the way humans have perpetuated these realities in our country. And so that said, I believe that God is calling white Americans to use our privilege with tremendous responsibility to overcome these injustices that our Black brothers and sisters are suffering. And so to not speak up about it, that's pretty serious business.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So share with me and the people that are watching, what you want the people to know that were like upset with you about sending the email, the ones that may have felt like you were pointing at them, or was just like really, really, didn't want you to put something like that out. What do you want them to know?
There was a handful of people, some I'm really close with, others that are just kind of peripherally involved with Life Remodeled, and I just learned about who they were when they emailed me. But number one, I want everyone to know I absolutely love you. And if I ever do anything or say anything that doesn't demonstrate my love for you, I'm sorry. And I repent, and I want to change. I want to love everyone on this planet. I strive to love everyone on this planet. And no matter how angry you may be at me right now, I absolutely love you. You're created in the image of God. We're meant to work together on this planet, and we need to figure out how to do that. And I'm committed to that. And I believe you are too if you wrote me. If you didn't write me and you're angry at me and you're watching this, I love you too. And I would love to have a conversation. The other thing that I would like to say is, I want you to know the number of responses that I got was over 100 people. And the responses from Black Americans was unbelievable. It's one of the most beautiful things I've ever experienced in my life. The way that so many people resonated with what I said, and they said, "Thank you for being a white man and using your place of privilege and position and risking your image by saying what you said." And I cannot begin to tell you the dozens and dozens and dozens of white Americans who wrote me and said, "Whoa, I deeply resonate with what you said. I didn't even know about the GI Bill. I'm going to read that book, White Fragility. I'm going to look at myself in the mirror today, and I'm going to be honest with myself. Thank you for being honest with me about your own journey." And I want you to know, because some have accused me, they said, "You're the type of person that starts the riots in America." I literally had a guy tell me that. And another Jesus follower told me, "Jesus would never talk like that. I think that you are using the language of the devil," right? And I want you to know, so many of my Christian brothers and sisters have written me and deeply resonated with what was said from their place of faith. And many have said, "I feel closer now to unity as a result of what I've heard today than I did before I read it." So, there's a lot of perspectives out there, and I respect you for telling me yours, and I love you.
That's good. That kind of set up the next question. And the next question is, of all of those letters that you received, one way or another, which one like stands out the most? Like what was the most surprising response that you received?
So there was a person I'm going to leave unnamed right now at this point, because I haven't spoken with this person to get their permission to share this publicly. Although I pretty much believe this person would be for me sharing this story, but I'm not going to, out of respect. An African-American leader who was absolutely furious with Life Remodeled, with me personally, with what we initially were doing with the Durfee Innovation Society when we acquired that building for $1 a year for 50 years. And this person was, I would say, maybe the most effective protester against what we were doing and tried to get the lease ripped up, and is a very intelligent, active person in society. So she's not someone you'd want to be on the other side of you. All right, let's just say like that. And this person ended up reading the email that I sent and sent it to, I think, over 100 people. I think almost everyone on that list was African American, and the vast majority of them are very politically active in Detroit. And this person said, I want you to read what Chris Lambert wrote. This is what white men in America need to be doing. And basically, he's walking the walk, and I'm proud of what he wrote. And she CC'd me on that. And, you know, when I saw that, it was shocking. I expected a lot of different responses from a lot of different people, but that one really shows the relationships that we formed. And that wasn't the result of one email. You know, this person and I have been working together, working through multiple conversations, but that email was an important thing to say and do during this time in history. And I thank God for that relationship that we have.
That's good. That's good. So a question came up through the comments that, you know, I think someone's asking, how do we let our Black friends know that we care about them on this subject matter? And I think I'll take a stab at answering that, right?
Please.
I think a big part of it is the interaction and engagement that you have before something like this happened, right? Like acknowledging some of their pain, thoughts, and perseverance and the whole nine, like before this, like creating spaces where they feel welcome and comfortable being themselves in front of you and around you. I sent a text out to a really good friend of mine last night who had not reached out to me. And the text said was this: look, I can sense you thinking about me. I can sense you praying for me. I know that it is awkward and uncomfortable to even try to approach this subject matter under these circumstances. So just know that I can sense your love. That's because of the way that they treated me apart from these situations, right? They were so relieved because, like, it would have been awkward and uncomfortable for them to reach out and worried that they would say the wrong thing, right? And put their foot in their mouth. But that took all of the pressure off. This person called me right after that and was like, thank you so much. You've been in my prayers and whatnot. But I would say that for the most part, we are going to extend the same type of grace that you would extend to somebody if you had a loss of a loved one and somebody's just reaching out and they may say something silly or something stupid. Like, we know to extend grace. So, but if you don't, if you haven't established that type of rapport, then it's very important that you do reach out, because we are wondering who stands with us and what your thoughts are during this time. So that's my advice. But expect some grace, and you know, you'll make mistakes on this journey if you approach this subject matter and are committed to doing this type of work. So the next question I have for you is, Chris, what was the most disappointing response that you received?
I think silence is the most disappointing response, and not just silence to my letter directly, but silence that I've seen from some of my white friends. I'm going to say what I'm most disappointed by, and I hope people don't take this the wrong way, is Christian leaders who aren't speaking out about what's going on right now. And here's why I say this, because, you know, we may think of Jesus as this peace-loving dude, but he said some pretty crazy, difficult, challenging things, and he directed almost all of them toward the religious leaders of his day. And it goes back to who much is given, much is required, I think. I mean, he literally called them pigs and snakes, which were two of the worst metaphors you could possibly say in Jewish culture in that time in history. And so I think I feel a little bit of that righteous anger as well. But on the other hand, I cannot tell you how many religious leaders did write back and are saying powerful things, white religious leaders in particular, who I'm thinking of. So far overshadowing anything I'm frustrated by is that. But here's what I'm going to say I feel a little bit of guilt toward. I got so many positive responses back from white people, tons from Black Americans. And a part of me was like, I don't even want to say thank you for a second, because I didn't do anything of value or of worth. Like, nothing I said was original. Nothing I said was brilliant. All I did was talk about historical experiences that are undeniable, that in reality, I wasn't even taught most of those in my entire education. And I told a couple experiences from my own life, and the pain that African Americans are feeling, no attention should go toward me whatsoever. But then I realized, like, okay, we are in this together. I thank you for the words of encouragement. I'm grateful to be your ally, and we're going to overcome this together by God's love and God's justice.
It's good. It's good. So this is something that I'm really interested to know, right? So in the letter, I'll read a quote, one of the quotes from the letter. It said, personally, I still battle with racist and prejudiced thoughts, ideas, and feelings about Black men to this very day, because it is impossible to fully erase the years of systematically racist training I've received in America. So can you give some thoughts and examples, some examples of some of the thoughts and feelings that you battle with?
You want me to tell everyone how I'm prejudiced? No, because if I do that, then people aren't going to like me. I'm kidding. You know I'm happy to do that, and I don't mean happy in the sense that we might think of happiness. It doesn't bring me joyful, exciting feelings, but I've come to a place in my life where it's really important for me to be transparent, and it's really important for me to be authentic. And I've also come to a place where I'm actually drawn to other people who are willing to do the same thing, and I'm actually not really excited about being around people who aren't willing to be authentic and transparent. And as recent as 4 years ago, I wouldn't have even probably thought of any of these things that I'm going to tell you right now, because I wasn't self-aware enough when it comes to the racism and prejudice inside of me to be able to identify these things. But I'll say, if I'm at a gas station at night and a Black guy walks by me and a white guy walks by me, I'm more likely to get ready to fight if a Black guy walks by me than I am if a white guy walks by me, because I have this image of Black men being more violent than white men. It's not true, but I have that image. All right. I'm not going to justify anything I'm saying. I'm just going to tell you what I've experienced. When I'm at a four-way stop in my car, and a Black person is on my left and I'm on the right. And if the Black person goes before me, right, instead of letting me go first, I'm likely to think to myself, oh, okay, yeah, that's a Black person feeling entitled, right? Like they have the ability to cut me off on the road. Or if I see a Black person that I know file for unemployment, I'm more likely to think to myself, yep, living off the system, right? Lazy, don't want to get a job. Or if I have someone in my life who's Black and they're an entrepreneur and they're complaining about how their business isn't succeeding, I'm likely to have a thought in my mind, well, you just aren't willing to work as hard as I've been willing to work, because entrepreneurism is hard work, and maybe you're just not willing to work as hard as I have, right? And those are just a few of the thoughts that have gone through my mind when I'm self-aware.
So now that you've shared that, I guess I really want to know, like, what are some of the ways that you try to combat those thoughts? Like, what does that look like practically so that you don't stay in that space?
I think the most important thing I've done, and I continue to do, is develop real, authentic relationships with Black men and women. And love conquers anything and everything, period. So yes, I read a lot of books, and that's really important. And I would say reading is a critical part of this journey. But nothing can replace the value of real relationships that are mutually life-giving relationships. I'm not talking about a relationship where I come in and I serve in Detroit, although I do that, and that's really important. But I'm talking about a real friendship and real quality friendships with Black men that completely changed my perspective and have helped me overcome and even actually identify these feelings. I didn't even know I had them until I had relationships with Black men. And then the other thing that comes to my mind would be an honest reflection on my own culture and an honest reflection on the many cultures that I've had the privilege of getting to know, and realize, like, a lot more white people cut me off every day on the road than black people do. And I've been in physical assaults with only white men in my life. I've never been in a physical assault with a black man. I've never even been in a position where I felt violence by a black man. And I live in the city of Detroit. And having honest assessments of all these situations, whether it's an entrepreneur complaining about not being successful and realizing my white privilege yet puts me in a place where even though I work my ass off, a black person has to work harder in America to be successful. So having that sense of understanding of history helps me be able to process the current experiences I go through.
All right. That's good. That's good. Those are good exercises. Do you have any intentional lessons? This is more about like you as like understanding what you learned on this journey and as a father, right? Do you have any intentional lessons that you share with your children to try to combat the training that America gives us when it comes to black men?
Okay, I got two boys. They're about to be 11 and 8 years old, Levi and Judah. So the most important thing I can do for them as it relates to race with black Americans, because we could talk about racism for people of color across the board, but right now we're talking about black Americans and black men in particular. Most important thing I can do is lead by example, and that's have real, deep, authentic relationships. I want to call out some of my great buddies: Walter Marshall, Daryl Bradford, Terrence Willis, Kirk Mays, Mike Rafferty, Dan Varner, the three guys I've gotten to know recently. But not only relationships, but also, as you've taught me, sharing not only resources, but sharing power and mutual relationships. And Walter Marshall and Daryl Bradford produced a documentary where they were the producers. They had the end say on what was going to be in that documentary and what wasn't and how it was going to be done. And going through that process with them was, I think, a fantastic experience for my boys to see me have really real relationships with black men. To that end, I want to make sure our boys have the opportunities to develop and navigate relationships with black boys. And so we live in Detroit. We live in a predominantly black neighborhood. We make sure our kids are going to schools where there's other black children. And then we help them navigate those relationships, because those relationships aren't always smooth sailing. And there's challenges in them. And we need to help our sons understand how to navigate those and deepen those relationships. And then we celebrate color in our family. So I've been in a grocery store before and heard someone say, "Oh, Mom, look, that person is black." And then the mom or dad just freaked out. "No, don't say that." And what we teach our kids is, no, say it, celebrate it. It's beautiful. Color is gorgeous. Color is God's design. And we really celebrate color around our house. We discuss the history they're taught in school, and we discuss the history they're not taught in school. And then we reflect on what's going on right now. They do catch news clips. They hear friends talk about it. They hear some of their white friends bring to school some of the things their parents have said. I'm not sure if their parents are aware of what some of my son's schoolmates are saying, but they bring those news stories home and we reflect on them. And one of the things I ask my sons to do is to ask them to see the thing behind the thing. Don't just listen to what someone's saying and what someone's doing, but try to figure out what are their motives. And I try to help them with critical thinking. So, someone may say what I'm doing is not racist, but let's analyze what's really in it for them when they do this thing. And what are the costs of what they're doing? And I think teaching them to see the thing behind the thing is a real important part of navigating racism in America.
It's good. It's good. Parenting. Wow. Yeah. So we'll see how that works, right? I think about, the many like facets and aspects of parenting and just throwing that in it. I mean, I have really interesting conversations recently with my 14 and 15-year-olds. So, and we've been having these conversations for a long time. I think it's unavoidable, especially in a Black home. Like, we don't see it as optional. Before I get to the last question that I had for you, there was some discussion that I think you recently had about, like, does America really hate Black men? Like, did you come up with that title for shock value? Do you believe that that's the truth? Like what was that? Explain to me a little bit about that conversation that you've been having with
There's
people about.
nothing I've gotten more pushback to than that title. And some people didn't even read past the title. And it made me rethink it. Like, okay, maybe I should have said that in a different way. But what I responded to some of my friends who said that to me is I said, well, I have worked with literally thousands of Black Americans, and many have told me directly that exact thing, that they believe America hates them. And I don't mean that every American, every white American hates Black people. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that they feel hated by the systems, the structures, the ethos. And that's the way that many of them feel. At the same time, I have Black friends that would say, I never feel that way ever. And I don't represent people who feel that way. So I guess I'd rather ask you, Dwan, how do you feel?
So yeah, I think that America is very consistent with with its hatred of Black people, and I would say when you're talking to Black men, I would definitely add fear as well. I ran that subject matter, and I talked about the email to a few of my friends who are Black men, and one of them, as recently as today, was saying, "Yeah, like I often ask that question, why hate us so much? Like, why hate us so much, right? And it's so intentional, right? The efforts." But he also said fear, right? So I think that oftentimes you probably get more of a consistent consensus around that. But I mean, if I'm talking personally, yes, I do. But I mean, when I say America, like it definitely like the from white America, the experience for as a Black man, um, I've definitely experienced and have felt the hatred, and I can run down a list of stories, and oftentimes it's that part feels, um, really, really like troubling when, in order to have somebody that's a peer of yours looking for a friendship with you, to want to hear like your trauma porn, right, about your experience as a Black man, um, in order to hopefully get them to understand, right? Like that is exhausting, and insulting, and it makes you relive the trauma, right? Um, but I would say, you know, you're not alone in your hatred, like for Black men, right? Like if we growing up in this country, like I've been taught, right, to hate and fear Black men. Like I share that same experience, like that Chris does. If I'm at a gas station in the late in the evening and I see a white dude versus a Black dude, like there's something about me, like that message that America's given me, about like Black men being dangerous and violent, like it starts to creep up, and I have to combat that, right? And then once upon a time, like I was a young Black man, and people used to look at me that way when I meant them no harm at all. So like it's really weird, but I would say that to pretend that it does not exist within me is going to like prevent me from ever working on it, right? So like I have overcome a lot of my self-hatred and hatred towards and fear of Black men because I acknowledged it, I recognized it, and doing the necessary work to combat it. So those are my thoughts on that.
Well, dude, that's powerful. And I found that when I shared that message, what I just said, that in my experience, that's how most Black people that I've met feel. Several of my white friends wrote back and they said, I believe you. I didn't believe it before you told me, but I believe you because I know that you spend a lot of your time in developing real deep relationships and you listen. And here's another thing is no Black person ever told me that until a few years ago. And I've been having relationships with Black men and women for over a decade. And I think a lot of my relationships were really superficial, more because of my own fault. And I think I didn't earn the trust of enough people to really tell me exactly how they felt. So I've had to listen to some things that were really very different than what I believed. And I've come to a place where I believe what people of color are saying. I mean, not everything that everyone calls racism is racism. Not everything's racism. But I tell you, I've come to see through many Black people in particular and people of color's eyes, and I really come to understand, I think, a little bit more of what they're saying. It's actually true. Whereas when I would hear a lot of those things in the past, I had defense mechanisms that would go up very quickly. And I could say, well, what did you think about this? Or did you think about that? Or what if it really meant this? Or what if it really meant that? And my defenses have dropped. And I think that has led to a lot more people of color being more honest with me than what they were in the past.
That's good. That's good. So as we approach the end, I guess the question that I want to know, and probably others want to know, is like, what can we expect next from Chris Lambert and from Life Remodeled moving forward?
So you can expect more of the same. And you can expect us to focus even more on creating equitable opportunities, because, we're not just going to talk about why is this stuff happening. You guys know we're working together towards solutions to making America great for everyone. And I hesitate to use that phrase, right? But I'm using it intentionally because it's not great for everyone. And we're going to focus on Black Americans in Detroit in particular. And we're going to continue to create opportunity in jobs and education and entrepreneurship and human services. And a big part of creating that opportunity is the other side of our mission, which is bridging people across divides. This doesn't happen without relationships with people from our region. It takes a village to raise a child. City and suburbs need to be working together. So you're going to see me focusing even more and more and more, and Life Remodeled, on developing deep relationships between Black and white in city and suburb. And one of the ways we're going to do that is creating even more opportunities to volunteer throughout the year, deeper opportunities, more ongoing volunteer opportunities, rather than just a 6-day project, so that you can create those deeper levels of relationships that lead to real, authentic conversations. But in order to participate in that, people are going to have to also be willing to give more time, right? And you're going to see more opportunities like that. And you're also going to hear more conversations directly about race. We did it with the Kaepernick discussion. And, Dwan, you and I both talked about this, the symbolism and the similarity between Kaepernick's knee and the knee that murderous police officer took on George Floyd is striking. And, the peaceful protest that Colin Kaepernick tried to lead caused quite an uproar. And I'm not even going to comment on the types of protesting we're seeing now, which most of it is peaceful. The vast majority is peaceful. But it's the issue causing the protests is what you're going to see Life Remodeled talk about, because we're going to reflect on yesterday, we're going to renew today, and we're going to reimagine tomorrow, and we're going to do it together.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. So appreciate being able to have this discussion with you. This is not new. We do this all the time, but I really enjoy being able to invite other people into this space. So do you have any closing thoughts? Because I think I do.
Yeah, I got a lot of things I want to rattle off. I think everybody, I want to encourage us all, if we're white, admit to ourselves we're all prejudiced. In fact, I think that goes for all human beings. We're all prejudiced. We all have prejudices. We're never going to fully overcome it. We're always on a journey. We're never fully going to arrive. Every day I want to be less prejudiced than the day before. I would say if you're a white person trying to be a white ally, and right now you're trying to influence someone in your life who's very far away from understanding racism in America, lower your expectations. And in some cases have no expectations, and sometimes just shake the dust off your feet and really try to work on those who are willing to hear the messages you have to read. The messages you have to share. I would encourage everyone to read the book White Fragility, who's white. I would encourage every white American to watch the documentary called The Color of Fear on Vimeo, and I can send that link out to anybody who wants it. I would also encourage every white American to support the leadership of Black men and women, but we're going to talk mainly about men today. And one man I'm going to ask you to support is my brother, Dwan Dandridge, who started an organization called Black Leaders Detroit. And they are raising money. They're asking for $1 a week for 52 weeks from 1 million people to raise $52 million to support Black-owned businesses and Black-led nonprofits in Detroit. And I want to ask you to support Dewan's work financially. And I want to ask you to find Black leaders, if you don't already have them, and get behind what they're doing. Don't just ask them to join what you're doing. Get behind what they're doing. And then lastly, actually not lastly, close to last, don't do this journey alone. Find other like-minded people, find white allies that you can do this journey with. And you're going to find a lot of them with Life Remodeled, and I'm one of them. And then I want to announce we got two things coming up. Next week on June 10th, we're going to have something called the Civility Project with Stephen Henderson and Nolan Finley. We're going to send an email about this, and it's going to be a Zoom call. You're going to be able to hear from two people who come from very different perspectives, a Black male, white male, and it should be very interesting. And then the following week, June 16th, I think is going to be one of the best things we're going to do all year. It's going to be a deep dive with my man, Dewan Dandridge, and he's going to talk about being brave enough to be yourself in spaces where you're not sure if you're welcome. That's going to be on June 16th from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. It's going to be 2 hours because it's going to be real deep. And I'm going to share some of my experiences. Dewan is even better at this than I am in many ways, shapes, and forms. Definitely when it comes to race. He's way better than I am at saying really hard things. He does something, and I don't like saying it like this, but there's a saying that some people can tell you to go to hell in such a way that you might get excited about the journey. And Dewan would never tell anyone to go to hell because he'd never want anyone to go there. But Dewan is one of the people who can say some of the hardest things to me and to others in a way that I actually want to hear what he has to say. And that is an art, that is a talent, that is a skill that can be developed. I have the ability to do it, and I do it, but Dewan does it better than me. He does it more often than I do. And I am a student of his when it comes to this. And I want you to be a student of his and to join us when we talk about this. So that's all I got to say. Dewan, I turn it over. You take the rest of the time.
Yeah, I wish you would have gave me a heads up that you were going to go all these places because
Sorry.
Yeah, I have lots of practice in suppressing my emotions. But I guess the thoughts that I would have is first, thank you. I appreciate that. And along with that, thank you. I want to challenge all of us to resist the temptation to make Chris a hero, in this space, right? The work that Chris has done, and I worked really closely with him for the past 3.5 years. It is impressive, to be honest, and to watch the journey. It continues to be beautiful. From watching you get your teeth kicked in meetings, saying some really crazy stuff, not knowing any better, making some really just bad moves. But watching this journey, but watching you come back right after that. Yeah, that has been beautiful to watch, and amazing. But I think if we make Chris out to be a hero, it does a couple things. One, it takes the pressure off of those of us that may need to enter this work. Because we create a hero, then that's harder for us to see ourselves attaining, getting to that place. So if we see him as a brother that's on a journey, then I think that's more healthy, because that says, okay, then if he's done the hard work, and I don't think that you'll find a more uncomfortable spot than some of the spots that I've seen Chris in, right? And you probably won't make some of the mistakes that I've seen Chris make.
Oh, shoot. We just lost you. I hope you come back. Oh, boy. Please tell me Lord Dewan's coming back. We need to hear what he has to say. Okay, you're back. We lost you. You said that people won't make the same mistakes I did. Please don't. All right, take it away.
And so you probably won't. Rest assured, it'll be hard to find yourself in some of the spots that he's been in on this journey, right? But the other thing is, like you don't want to make him a hero in a space that is still so new to him. And you've had people working in this space forever that know a lot more than I do, have put in a lot more work than I have or than Chris has. Like those are the heroes, if anybody, right? Like I don't like to like make anybody a hero because that puts too much pressure on anybody. And I think that like we all get it right sometimes, we all get it wrong sometimes. But we need the white hero narrative is something that we still have to combat, right? And that's even me saying that even after Chris gave me the type of plug that he just gave at Black Leaders Detroit. I love him. I see him as a brother, but like he will not be a hero for me, right? So I say let's resist that temptation and let's do the work necessary to get to the place where we all are working to make America great for everybody. That's it.
Amen. Love you, brother.
Love you too, bro.